So now we are going to get into the second part of tax preparation, which is the output. We know how to get our files into Neat now. We know how to organize them in a way that is going to be beneficial for getting that data out of Neat later for preparing your taxes. So let's actually look at what you can get out of Neat to prepare your taxes. Our goal today is really to try to simplify that process for you and give you some straightforward steps to prepare your taxes using Neat. To get started, let's quickly take a look at a high-level, simplified view of what steps you need to follow to prepare and then submit your tax return and how Neat can help you with those steps. So here's our simple high-level guide. First, you want to check your data for accuracy. You want to look for files in your data that have blank or missing data. You want to look for incorrect data, and you also want to check and look for duplicates in your data as well, both your tax documents and your expense documentation. You want to review those files and then make sure you update them for accuracy. In step 2, you want to maximize your deductions. A tax professional is someone who can certainly help you maximize your deductions the best. Deductions can reduce the amount of taxes that you owe and also increase your overall refund. Neat can help you stay on top of your deductions so long as you stay organized and make sure your data is accurate. In step 3, you need to gather all the necessary documents, all the necessary expenses to submit your tax return, which primarily include like your income and your expense documentation. And we're going to focus most of our time on that, the data that you can gather out of Neat for tax preparation. In step 4, you want to do one final check for any errors in your data, specifically really kind of focusing more now on double checking that the information you're providing, such as like your bank information, your social security information, is all accurate. And then when you're ready, a best recommendation is to file your return electronically because electronic returns are just faster, straightforward, and they lead to fewer errors in submitting your tax return. As a last step, you want to track and save your refund. Electronic refunds typically process within 21 days. And once that return comes back, you want to save a copy of your tax return for at least 3 years in case you need to reference it later for an audit or for filing your taxes in the following year. And you can obviously use Neat to store that tax return. So you'll notice that many of these steps here are the same ones that you should really be taking throughout the year to stay organized and tax ready. The amount of work that you need to do at tax time is directly impacted by how consistently you've stayed organized all year long. If you've been following these organization steps, you have these good financial and organizational habits, tax season is going to feel so much more manageable. But if you have waited until the last minute, you're going to likely spend a significant more time getting prepared. And, you're going to need to go through these steps to get all of your data ready for your tax return. We're going to really kind of look at steps 1, 2, and 3 mainly, because those are the steps that Neat really helps you out with. Even if you are doing even if you're doing this all year long, you still want to do one final check to check that your data is accurate. To do a final check of the accuracy of your data, I recommend using our sorting and our filtering tools in Neat to quickly find files that have missing data or holes in their data, have incorrect data, or is maybe a duplicate. You can filter your 2025 receipts for blank fields. So there's a screenshot up here at the top right where you can see I'm filtering my vendor by blank. Blank is a field that if you see that field means that I have data in my account or vendors in my account that are missing. I have like a receipt with no vendor in it, essentially. Remember, the IRS requires that your date, your amount, your payment types, and your locations are all accurate. So you can use filtering in Neat to filter by all of those fields and look for these blank fields. If you see blank, then you know that there are holes in your data somewhere. You should filter by that blank field and then update those fields so that they are accurate. If you don't see blank as a file filter, then that means that there are no blank files or no blank vendors or categories or amounts in your data. Again, this is kind of where having all of your expenses for like your tax deductions in one folder is so helpful because you can review all of your expenses in one folder at a time rather than having to do this process in multiple different folders across your database. It's really just going to help you track how many receipts you actually have in your database and how many, expenses need to be reviewed before submitting your tax return. Using the sorting feature, you can also sort your grid by date and by amount to see if there are duplicate entries. Sorting your data by date will allow you to see if there are similar purchases on similar dates for duplicates, and same thing for total amount. If you sort your data by amount, you can see if there are, duplicate amounts in there that may show you that you have duplicate entries in your data. And then lastly, you want to also compare your receipts with your statement, your bank statement, your credit card statements to ensure that there aren't any missing data throughout your Neat database. As a Neat pro tip, if you have our Neat Plus Automated Insights plan, that step's even easier because you can connect all of your financial accounts, your bank accounts, your credit card accounts to Neat. And then, you can very easily see if there are any missing expenses in your database that don't match these transactions that have come through to Neat. Our monthly review workflow helps you match the raw data from your transactions and from your statements that are coming through transactions to the matching source documents that you've uploaded to your file cabinet, the proof of purchase that you have in your file cabinet. So it'll just help you clearly identify anything that's missing in your database. The next step in preparing your tax return is to maximize your deductions. Here, you kind of want to do the same thing you did to check your data for accuracy. You want to use the filters and the sorting tools, but this time you want to look for files with blank category, like expense categories, either blank expense categories or general retail expense categories. The reason being is because general and general retail expense categories are not specific enough. You should review any receipts in your database with a general expense category and see if there's an expense category, a better expense category that fits it. Obviously, not necessarily important if that particular receipt is not something you're submitting for your deductions or anything like that. And then obviously, whenever possible, as a part of this step, you also want to make sure you're splitting your receipts. So if you haven't done that throughout the year, now's the time to go through those receipts and make sure everything's split so that you can maximize those deductions and you aren't penalized for, claiming a whole total amount of an expense when only part of that expense was actually deductible. Once you feel confident that you have all of your data in Neat and that your data is accurate, then you need to gather all of your documents together. So here is a high-level overview of some common documents needed to file a tax return. Additional documents may be required based on your unique situation, but basically it comes down to your income documentation, things like your W-2s, your 1099s, your wages and tips, and any compensation that you receive throughout the year. Expense documentation. These are like receipts for medical expenses, childcare, education, and other expenses that can be counted as tax deductions. And as pro tip, if you are using Neat for your business, Neat can also be deducted because you're using it for your business. So make sure you deduct Neat as well. You're also going to need your bank records, such as your savings statements, your interest income, and other records like this that you might need for tax deductions. And then lastly, you'll need a copy of your prior year's tax return, which helps you maintain consistency in your filing and ensures that you don't miss anything from year to year. So we're actually going to share two tax preparation checklists with you right now. These checklists go into a lot more detail about what information and documentation you need to file a tax return. We have a tax preparation list for both individuals and businesses alike. So depending on what your specific needs are, you can download one or both of those checklists. So they're going to become available to you guys in one moment. You can go ahead and download those and keep those. So there are many ways to get your data out of Neat. You can get both your file image data out of Neat. You can export your data to PDF files if you need a PDF file of expenses or your tax documentation. You can also export data out as a CSV file. So all of those file fields, those project, those customer fields, the notes fields, all of those fields are also exportable data that you can export to a CSV file, which you can then import to something like Excel to further slice and dice that data or apply your own business formulas and functions to. And then lastly, there's also reporting in Neat. There's like the Neat expense report. Specifically for expenses and tax deductions, the Neat expense report is especially helpful because the expense report provides you with a summary of all of the expenses in the report along with their expense categories. It provides you with a line-by-line breakdown of all of the expenses in that particular report, including the notes for those files. And then you can also include a CSV export of all of that data as well. So you have it in the report and also as a separate CSV file. And then lastly, the expense report also allows you to include file images. So you can include all of the images of the receipts, all of your proof of purchase receipts to the expense report as well, allowing you basically to give your CPA or accountant essentially everything that they need to review your expenses and maximize those tax deductions. So I wanted to do a quick demonstration for you guys of an expense report in Neat and kind of what you can get out of it. And then we're going to talk about one last thing, which is sharing your tax documents once you've created them. And then we'll move into a Q&A. So just give me 1 second here while I share my screen again. This is where having all of your expenses in one tax prep folder is really going to help you out. Like I stored all my 2025 business expenses. So these are expenses that could be considered deductible in one specific folder. And so it's just going to make it much easier for me to run a report and get all of this data out of me. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on reports here. And I am going to, for spending and tax reporting, we have this expense report here. I want to create this report from files in my file cabinet. So I'm going to click expense report. And then because I have all my expenses in one folder, I just need to filter this report by one thing. And that's my folder. I can choose my 2025 business expenses folder and click save. I know my data is accurate in there. I know that my expense categories are accurate. I know that I've split all of my receipts so that I'm maximizing my deductions and everything's all stored in that folder. So it makes it very easy for me to quickly run a report on this. So I'm going to just click next step then. I don't need to filter it any more than that. You can go ahead and you can name your report. I highly recommend that you are very detailed in the naming of your report. So I'm going to put 2025 tax deduction report here. I'm going to save it directly back in my 2025 business expenses folder. That way, whenever I go to that folder, everything I need, all the data I need about that folder is in that folder. And then I can add some notes like, send to my CPA for review. And that way I know that this was something that I wanted to have my CPA review so that I can ensure that all the ways I've split my receipts and categorized my receipts are in the best categorizations they can be for me. I can go ahead and I would highly recommend as a part of this that you include a download as a CSV. So this will take all of those expenses that are in this report and as a part of the report creation, also create a downloadable CSV file for me so that I can not only have the line-by-line breakdown, but have all of this data as a CSV file as well. And then I'm going to click create. So Neat is going to work on creating this report in the background. Depending on how much data I have in here, it might take a few moments. Now, ahead of this webinar, I did create an example one so that we could just get right into it. So this is what my expense report will look like for my deductions once it's done processing. I've come through and I did add my own categories and projects to this. I added a project for tax return 2025. Again, I love these file fields as tags so that I can quickly find things like anything related to my tax return for 2025. My report shows me all of the different categories, expense categories that are in my expense report, and the total amount and the total number of receipts associated with that specific expense category. When I scroll down, I also see a line by line breakdown of all of the expenses in this report, along with their file notes, along with all of their tax categories, dates, amounts, etc. And then when I scroll down even further, I also have we have all of the receipt data as well, or the images of the proof of purchase for all of these expenses that I have in my database as well. And so this report really has everything my CPA or accountant or I might need to verify that what I'm filing for my taxes is accurate. If my CPA had a question about a specific receipt, not only can they see the line by line breakdown and the notes that I left about that particular receipt, but they can also just scroll to that item within my report and actually see the physical proof of purchase and pull details off it. Maybe I calculated the tax percentage incorrectly, or maybe I need to update something about this, or maybe I can't deduct something on a specific expense, and that CPA or accountant will be able to see those things because all of that data is now in front of them. So that is the neat expense report, and I think is really helpful because it gives you everything that you need all at one time. This is what the CSV export looks like. So this was the CSV export that was generated just now. We can see that not only do all of the file fields that are included in my expense report come out, but also all of the other fields as well, like my projects, my product and location fields that I can use to further slice and dice this data in Excel if I needed to. Once you have, once you've created that expense report, there are some other things, there are other things that you might want to do to get data out of me, and that would be sharing your documents. So if you need to share your documents with like a tax professional or with somebody else or to yourself so that you can include them in a report or something like that, there are several ways that you can share your files in. One of the ways that you can do that is you can actually email a bunch of files at one time by selecting all of the files and then clicking email. I could go to my 2025 business tax documents, select everything here, and then email all of these documents at one time to my CPA or accountant. Again, because all my files are in this one folder, makes it super easy for me to send everything at one time over to my CPA or a tax professional. Another way that you can share documents in Neat is through folder sharing. If I didn't just want to send these files to my CPA as an email, I could actually share this whole folder with my CPA or accountant. Then my CPA could log into a Neat account using their own credentials and access this folder and be able to add comments to all these files as well. We could start a working conversation about how I need to upload certain or need to update certain files, or they can ask me questions through comments here, and we can have a very instead of going back and forth via email or through call, a lot of this conversation can happen within the Neat application itself. And then lastly, you can also share your entire account with a user as well. So all Neat plans come with the ability to add up to 4 additional users to your account. You could add your CPA or accountant to your Neat account, and then they would have access to all of the files within your database. So you could give them access to a specific folder or specific set of folders, or you could give them access to everything if you would like them to be like really hands-on with helping you prepare your taxes. So that is pretty much it. I had a few other handouts that I wanted to share with you guys as well. So I'm going to share those with you now. The first handout I'm going to share with you is sharing your tax documents with a professional. So that's going to pop up in a second here. You might have to scroll down in the handouts because there's so many that I've shared today to find this one. But this particular handout walks you through how to share your files via email, folder sharing, or account sharing with like specific steps. So you can see that there. I'm going to share one final handout with you guys, and this is actually the slides that we just went through. So the slide deck that I just presented to you guys is now also something that you can download as well. It has some tips and tricks in there if you want to take a look at the slide deck again. And the very last thing that I'm going to share with you guys, at least for now, is a tax readiness guide for small businesses. So this is actually a help center article that we put together specifically for small businesses that walks you through 9 steps to year-round tax readiness with a lot of specific practical advice and tips. I highly recommend clicking the link to bookmark that article, and then you can come back to that whenever you'd like. Like I said, it goes far more in depth for small businesses and other things that you should consider when for being tax ready year round. I hope that you guys can walk away with a clear plan for getting organized and feeling confident as tax season approaches, or we're really in tax season already as tax day approaches. I highly encourage that everybody take the best practices that we've shared with you today and try to integrate them into your regular habits, your healthy habits. You're definitely going to thank yourself next year for an easier tax season if you start now. Thanks again for joining us. I will see you all in the next one. Thank you.